All right. Hey, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for our second Editorial Board Livestream. It is the day after the election, and we are, if you all watched us last night, we had Bexar County Judge Nelson Wolf that evening to kind of talk about the end of his political career and his legacy. But today we have the incoming Bexar County Judge, Peter Sakai, Bexar County Judge-elect. So, Peter, thank you for joining us. We're going to talk with you about your vision, your plans, baseball, the national environment, all kinds of questions we're going to throw your way. So I'm Josh Brodesky. I'm the editorial page editor.
Carrie Clatt.
It's live, Carrie.
columnist.
We're very tired.
Right, we're all tired.
We stayed up very late.
Yeah.
You all know Carrie Clark. Yeah. I'm Nancy Prayer Johnson, Associate Editorial Board Editor.
And I'm Peter Sakai, your judge-elect for Bexar County Judge.
Well, Peter, you crushed it last night, and you crushed it this election. I think you outperformed other Bexar County Dems, if I'm recalling correctly. So let's just talk. It was a really intense campaign. You maintained your positivity, but it was still it was a campaign that I wasn't really expecting to see in terms of some of the negativity that was swirling around it. So can you talk about just what the campaign was like and the campaign that you ran, and then we'll shift into the road ahead.
Sure, Josh. A year ago, I stepped down off the 225th District Court. I was a district court judge, both as an associate judge for Children's Court and then 4 terms as the 225th District Court for a total about 26 years. And so, I'm a seasoned elected official. I could also say I'm old, but my team has said, don't use that term. You're seasoned, you're a veteran. And so when I stepped down, and Judge Wolf had announced that he was going to retire, I saw an opportunity to continue my public service. And that's what motivated, because I easily could have gone to senior status. I could have joined a law firm. I could have done mediations, arbitrations, and kind of just kick back and enjoy my grandkids that I'm shortly going to go see as soon as I finish this podcast. But I decided to step up and run to be the next county judge in order to kind of serve the people. And as you know, Josh, my whole career has been focused on children and families, and that's what I want to do as county judge. I want to keep the focus of Commissioner's Court and county government to better serve the citizens. And so one of my first things I want to do is basically on January step in there, get together with our county commissioners, and I know we got a new county commissioner, Precinct 3. Give congratulations to Commissioner-elect Moody, and I'll be looking forward to working with him. And so finding the solutions to the many complex problems that we have here in our community.
Yeah, I mean, you ran on, you called it Bare Essentials, if I'm remembering correctly, and you ran on this campaign of obviously focusing on families, child welfare, which is very much in your wheelhouse from your time as district judge. We live in a community with entrenched poverty rates. Mm-hmm. So share with our viewers and with our board your ideas about, these are deep-seated issues in our community.
You're right, Josh, and that's the reason why, as the district court judge focusing on child abuse and neglect, I saw firsthand with first-person knowledge of what the issues are. Obviously, I was able to bring innovative, cutting-edge programs called Family Drug Court, Early Childhood Court, our college-bound docket for foster kids, innovative cutting-edge programs. And so that's the perspective I want to bring to Commissioner's Court. How can we better serve our community? And with that, Josh, I'll be focusing, as I promised in my platform, looking at affordable housing, increasing the capacity of affordable housing for the working families. As I told you at the editorial board meeting, we've got a lot of working families that are being displaced right now, and obviously a lot of the COVID protections are going to come off. And we're probably going to see an increase of evictions through our JP courts. That is a county function. And so we need to be prepared for the working poor. I mean, we know that Haven for Hope, which was built for the homeless, is full of children and families, the working poor. So that is going to be an immediate problem I see that we need to tackle. And I want to partner up with the city of San Antonio and provide that public-private partnership, get the nonprofit community, get the faith-based community, the churches involved to increase the capacity. We know that we have a chronic homeless issue, and I heard the neighborhood associations during this campaign. the people that live in the streets, so to speak, in the culverts and under the bridges, so to speak. And we need to deal with that. And I know that a big issue there is our veterans that suffer from mental health issues, veterans with PTSD. So we have to have a specialized treatment with them. And I really believe that's what we call a housing first. Let's get them off the street, so to speak. We need to partner up with the military community and in essence, use the call to duty, so to speak, with the military, trying to get these veterans back in, because we know they're choosing, in essence, to live that type of lifestyle. And obviously, in some neighborhoods, it's a problem. And so we've got a lot of issues. We also have workforce issues, and I want to work on workforce. We got make sure education. We know education is a key component to deal with generational poverty. So we need to support our public schools and our education system. And we have an opportunity with public health, with the new public health entity, to make sure that wellness, nutrition, deal with in a proactive way with the issues of obesity, diabetes, heart disease. So I just see those are the basic nuts and bolts that I think. And I think what the voters have told me clearly is, Judge, we got issues, fix them. And let's quit arguing, and let's not get into political debate over ideology and partisan issues. Fix the issues that we have in our community.
Well, on housing, the city has the housing bond, of course. So are you anticipating maybe a county housing bond as well, or just general fund dollars to support it?
I look at trying to partner up with the city and trying to enhance and leverage, and obviously looking to the federal government, state government, looking for the grant opportunities. I feel that the Biden administration is going to continue to try to invest in infrastructure. So we need to take advantage of every opportunity we can to leverage funds. And so if the county needs to kick in some money out of its taxpayer money, I'm willing to commit to do that, to make sure that we can increase the capacity of affordable housing. So that means partnering up with the developer community and making sure that when we provide tax incentives, tax abatements, tax credits, tax reinvestment zones, that we are including multi-housing, and that we don't focus in on what we call the concentration of poor, where we put all poor people in one area. We need to make sure that we are being very respectful and give dignity to the people, the working poor.
Do you undersell your? One of the things you contrasted yourself with Judge Wolf during the campaign was that you say he was a visionary, and your nuts and bolts and bare essential. But yet at the same time, you talk about innovative and cutting edge programs that you created as judge. So do you undersell your capacity to be a visionary?
Perhaps, Kerry. I mean, as a judge, I learned, the judicial ethics kind of protected me from having to kind of get out and be partisan. So I know as county judge, I have to take positions and be more assertive. But I also think it's also my culture. I think it's just my personality. I'm just low key. I don't need buildings or things named after me. I don't need to put big legacy projects that say, okay, this is what Sakai stands for. I just learned in the courtroom, we dealt with one family at a time and one child at a time. And you and Nancy covered those cases in the courtroom. And that's all we have to do. We just help each individual who comes in there. And that's how we make a better and healthier community. And so whether it's undersell or just my nature and my personality, I just want to get the job done. And that's the type of leadership I'm going to do. Just let's deal with the problem, let's find solutions, and let's move forward. So in that sense, I believe I'm visionary, but some people may just think it's nuts and bolts, and I'm okay with that. I don't need the accolades. I just want to get results.
What do you have huge shoes to fill on the court. Can you talk directly about children's court and CPS and those issues and what you recommend going forward, and maybe what role maybe you can still play?
Well, as you know, when I first took the children's court back in 1995, Nelson was the county judge along with Tracy, the first lady, and they came and saw that I worked in a courtroom that was 1,200 square foot, they call the closet. And they said, no, this is not the way we should handle these cases. This is not giving dignity and respect to all those children and families. And Tracy went out there and raised, $4 million, and the county, I think, just put in about $1 million, and we created the historic, nationally renowned Children's Court up on the 3rd floor of the Bexar County Courthouse, about 12,000 turnkey operations with courts, office space, space for the nonprofit community, and created those innovative and cutting-edge programs that I earlier made reference to. And so I see the opportunity to also focus in as a commissioner's court on and creating local solutions to our foster care system. It is obviously, and I don't think I'm misspeaking to say, our child welfare system is broken. Yeah. It is flawed. It's under federal jurisdiction. We got a South Texas judge that continually holds the state of Texas in contempt. And so instead of complaining and saying, well, those poor kids, I'm going to be looking for solutions. I want to have conversations with Governor Abbott and say, look, Bexar County is ready to step up to take care of those foster kids. And what can we do locally? And so one of my last duties as a district court judge was dealing with the CWAP kids, the children without placement. And I want to do something about that. And what I see is perhaps with the surplus money that the state of Texas has, why can't we create a state-of-the-art facility, much like the military did for the disabled veterans coming off that were hurt during the war? The place called Intrepid over at BAMC, Fort Sam military base that is state-of-the-art. Why can't we have a state-of-the-art residential treatment center for foster kids? And we can serve not only Bexar County kids, but the entire foster care system, and let's partner up. So state of Texas, we put your big share of that money. County will put some share. Maybe we get the city of San Antonio to kick it in, and we can be the leader to take care of those kids. And in that regard, Carrie, I think that's visionary, but that's also a nuts and bolts approach of how we can work on a child welfare system. We also know that our juvenile justice system is broken too, and I want to make sure our justice system is up to speed, and we know that we got to get jury trials back on track. And so that's in my wheelhouse. As a former judge, I know what those judges need to do, and we got to make sure that we're working at the most effective, efficient level.
And I just want to segue right quick, and I know we're going to talk about so many issues, but just, again, staying on family and children, domestic violence. Can you just kind of give the background for people who are watching, for the audience, and then what your goals are with that?
Sure. I mean, obviously, domestic violence is an issue in the Child Abuse and Neglect Court that I had direct firsthand knowledge. So before I left, I created the Collaborative Commission on Domestic Violence, and it's continuing with Judge Monique Diaz and Deputy City Manager Maria Villagomez from the city. And they're continuing the Collaborative Commission, obviously, and I know it's still a work in progress. I think y'all have written about it. It still has a lot of work to do. There's some accountability issues there. And so that's another issue that I want to basically put on on my radar and the county's radar of how we can make and deal with the complex issue of domestic violence. I think what is the underpinning and strength of the Collaborative Commission is the ability of all the stakeholders of talking and communicating. So I realized, and I think y'all have pointed out, okay, where's the results? Where's the accountability piece? And that's something I'm going to be asking. As a county judge, I will now kind of go back on the judiciary and on that Collaborative Commission going, okay, we got to see results. But that also means asking the district attorney's office, Joe Gonzalez, what are you doing? It's also asking the sheriff, Javier Salazar, what are you doing? Chief McManus over at PD, what are you doing? City of San Antonio, what Metropolitan Health District, what are you doing? And let's get an assessment. Let's use metrics and analytics to see, okay, are we on the right path or not? Or are we wasting people's time and money? And do we need to really revamp and redo? Or, and I'll have to make tough decisions. I may have to hold my judges that I used to work with. I'm not going to give them a pass on that. I'm going to be like, you guys got to produce. And judges, are we working hard enough? Are we giving those victims the voice that they're asking to be heard? Because that was the main issue in creating the Collaborative Commission, Nancy, is that I clearly heard the victims. We are not heard. We're not respected. And so I want to make sure the victim is heard, but at the same time, as a former judge, we got to make sure we give due process to the perpetrators and make sure that they're going to effective programs. And we got to partner up with the nonprofits, the Family Violence Prevention Services, the Peace Initiative with Patricia Castillo and Martha Pelaez out there. We got to make sure our batters are going through effective therapeutic programs that are truly changing their actions and behaviors. Because that's one thing I learned as a district court judge. You don't change action and behavior unless you change attitudes and beliefs. And we know in San Antonio, we just do things a certain way, and there's a lot of culture issues that we need to be sensitive to. So that's a big ticket item that I think we're going to have to continue, and I appreciate the Express News keeping the focus in on domestic violence. That's one of the underpinnings as to why we have so many issues in our community.
Well, I mean, there's so many questions to springboard from that, and I don't want to get too down into the weeds, but like on the legal side, does the district attorney's office, does it need more prosecutors? Let's just start there. Do we need more prosecutors if we have this immense backlog?
The answer is perhaps, but at the same time, do we need new courts? I don't believe we necessarily need new courts.
Okay.
Do we need to work more efficiently and more smartly in the sense of can we move cases? And then one of the issues, and this is something I'll be asking our local judiciary to look at, is what we call those civil protective orders. Are we efficiently giving civil protective orders on those domestic violence issues? Right. And so that is a question I'll be asking of the district attorney's office. How effective and efficient are we helping victims? Because if you listen to victims, they'll tell you people aren't listening. Then I'll be asking law enforcement, SAPD, the Bexar County Sheriff's Department, how are we handling these calls? Because you also hear calls of victims not being respected by law enforcement. So it's a systemic issue, Josh.
Right.
So it's basically looking at this issue from a systemic point of view and not pointing blame or pointing fingers at any entity. It's like, how can we connect? And that was, before I left, that was one of the things the Collaborative Commission was doing very well. It was basically asking everybody to look at themselves and not point fingers, but saying, how can we improve the delivery of services? And I think that's what I can do, at least as county judge for county government. How can we better serve the community?
Right. You anticipated one of my questions, which was, do we need, we have these 2 family violence courts, that's all they do, and we have this huge backlog, and then the cases have been distributed out, right? So should we go back to a model where everybody just takes these cases? Do we need additional, you said you don't think we need more courts, but maybe there's a case to be made that we should have.
Well, what we're going to need to do is we need to measure it. To answer your question, we've got to then go back and say, okay, when we opened up and let everybody do it, what did that mean? Did any more cases get disposed of? Are there any more convictions?
Right.
How many more people got put through these, what they call BIT programs, Batters Intervention Prevention Programs? I need to talk to the nonprofit community because a lot of my feedback comes from the nonprofits because they're the organizations that serve and have direct relationships to victims and perpetrators. And so we need to have metrics and analytics. It's one thing, I'll be honest, I'm a baseball fan, so I'm one of the, Moneyball is, and so I'm very big on analytics. And that is something that I think as children's court, I demanded of my staff. I said, let's measure our success. And I was able to do that. And that's why I always felt that I was treated with dignity and respect by Commissioner's Court, because I would be able to go to them and make presentations. And that's something that the judiciary judges sometimes don't do. Sometimes they think we don't have to be held accountable. And I held myself accountable to a high standard. And that's the reason why I felt my programs delivered and provided effective use of taxpayer money.
Do you feel like everybody's expecting more money, the courts?
Oh, sure. I mean,
everybody's going to go.
I was local administrative judge. I was in charge of all the district courts. I was in charge of children's court. And every year we asked for money. But as you know, and y'all have written the stories, we created programs in children's court, what we call the normalcy program, which was giving money to the foster kids for their extracurricular activities. No other county does that. No other county does that, but Bexar County. And I tell you what, the state of Texas, namely to the Supreme Court Children's Commission, go, you guys should do what Bexar County does. And so we have always been the template of this is what we do for our foster kids. We have the College Bound docket that is linking kids to college and creating a pipeline. We've got centers at each of the major universities, UTSA, San Antonio, Texas A&M San Antonio, and the San Antonio College District, where foster kids can get support services because we know they get tuition waiver, but that's it.
Yeah.
They don't get housing. They don't get room and board. They don't get any assistance. And then guess what? We terminated parental rights, and guess who their parents are? It's that caseworker. And so unfortunately, at 18, most of these foster kids are abandoned by the person that was supposed to be responsible for them, and that's the state of Texas.
Yeah.
And so that's the reason why Bexar County has been a leader about taking care of children that have aged out. And we've got over 600 kids in Bexar County going to college right now. Mm-hmm. And I'll be honest, I think you're going to see more kids coming to Bexar County going, this is where we need to be. Because this county cares for its foster kids. And so that's kind of the attitude and perspective I want to bring to county government. How can we make a difference? And so that's the reason why Josh and Carrie, if that's nuts and bolts, I call that nuts and bolts. But at the same time, now that I think about it, it is visionary. We do things that other people don't do.
What about the nuts and bolts of the proposed baseball stadium? You just said you're a baseball fan, and that wasn't something that was a topic, when we met with the editorial board. So.
Right. It became a topic on the stump, so to speak. In order to draw a contrast with my opponent, I said and asked that question. I said, I do not support the use of county taxpayer money for building a baseball stadium. Now that there are talks about private investors buying the baseball team and perhaps creating I'm all in for a baseball stadium if it's privately funded. Oh, and if it needs any kind of assistance, let me see if it's an effective, efficient use of taxpayer money. I'll consider it, but I'm not going to commit to it unless I see that it brings a direct benefit. And I realize professional sports does bring the Spurs. I have had conversations with Spurs. So I would like to have a conversation with the Spurs. How are they going to be involved? Are they going to be a competitor to this? Or are they going to partner up, perhaps, and be a partner in this development of a baseball stadium? I'm willing to look at any and all, and I see a baseball stadium as part of it can be part of economic development, but I'm not going to go all in without accountability. And that's all I'm looking for. I'm looking for accountability if you're going to use taxpayer money.
So on the campaign, no taxpayer money. Post-campaign, possible taxpayer money if there's a clear public benefit.
Clear public benefit, or it's a majority, it's privately funded.
If the majority of it's privately funded.
Right.
Could you see structuring a deal in a way that profits, some portion of profits, are directed towards some of these key community issues?
Sure, because the other thing, as you know, Josh, it gets into the details, and if it's going to use hotel, motel, the taxes there, the tax monies that come in through that's what it's built for. The state of Texas has, I believe, a fund for professional sports. Let's leverage that. So it's all about leveraging. It's all about, I just don't want a commitment to say, I'm just going to open my wallet and say, county's just going to do whatever the private developers want me to do to build a stadium. I just wanted to make it clear that I'm going to put children and families first.
Right.
And then if I can see a direct benefit, I'm all in.
You ran this, you emphasized a really positive campaign. No matter how, there were some dark moments in the actual, not your campaign, but the campaign environment around this race. I'm curious to, we're in a very polarized and divided national environment. And so I want to hear your thoughts about the national environment. And, yes, county judge is just a drop in the bucket in this larger political ecosphere. But how do you see, your campaign fitting in with the national mood? And what do you make of this deeply divided national mood?
Well, that was probably the biggest adjustment for me, especially coming out of the judiciary. That, as I indicated earlier, judicial ethics kind of protected me from the rough and tumble world of partisan politics. People don't go, are you a Republican judge or a Democratic judge? You're either a judge or you're not a good judge. And so, I was insulated, so to speak, from that. But this last year, yeah, your board and the neighborhood associations and other groups, where do you stand on these issues? And I had to take a stand. Like the baseball say, where do you stand? I took a stand and stated it clearly. And so, from a national perspective, yeah, the toxicity, the negativity, yeah, that drains the soul, so to speak. And so, I had to kind of toughen up, so to speak, to deal with that and to be prepared for that. And I think what I come away with our campaign is, and maybe it's because, again, I'm seasoned, I'm a veteran, and so I decided that I was going to run a positive campaign, and that I knew that perhaps people would have to go negative on me to kind of knock off some of my goodwill or good standing in our community. And so that happened in the primary, Josh, with in the runoff with Representative Minhadas. And so I knew that came, and we saw, even though I was told by a lot of pundits, why aren't you going negative? Why aren't you fighting back? That's part of the game. And I think I'm hoping that my campaign, especially as we finished out in the general election with Commissioner DeBerry, and she again taking the negative road, that what we did, we stayed positive. We ran a clean campaign, and that we never kind of drop down to that level of negativity. And I'm hoping it's a template. I'm hoping it's a model to say you don't have to do that, especially if you have the credentials and reputation. And perhaps my campaign will encourage other people who kind of are in my position. I've served my time. I easily could have gone to retirement status. So I'm also looking at our seasoned veterans, public officials, people that are still care for our community. Hey, it's not time to retire. We are in a time of what I believe we need leadership. We need leadership, and I know sometimes, and I hear it, yeah, well, we got to look at the young and up-and-coming leadership, and I understand that, but at the same time, I think we need to look at my generation, the baby boomers, and say, you're not finished yet. Why aren't you still in the hunt, so to speak? Why aren't you providing leadership? And so perhaps I'm the template. Run a clean campaign. You're not finished, even though you might be ready to retire. You can still serve and do public service. So don't be afraid of this system, because you can prevail if you've got the credentials and you can convince people that you have the right message. And I think, Josh, you hit it. I mean, I got a mandate. I've got overwhelming support, and I think it's because we stayed clean, we stayed positive, and we talked about the issues, and we didn't sink to the level of negativity. I think that totally turns people off, even though we know from the political consultants and the pundits, that's the game. I'm trying to change the rules, so to speak, in that regard. So those are my 2 cents in regards to that.
I've often thought, as the campaign got darker and all of this controversy was happening, I often thought of your wife. Now, I have not met your wife yet. I hope to meet her, but she's a retired teacher, right?
That's right.
So what was her take on it? Did she ever try to say, like, well, I don't know, Peter, maybe what are we getting ourselves into, kind of thing?
No.
Where does she stand now?
Rachel is the opposite. Rachel was, you're on the right path. You're doing this for the right reason, and that's the reason why you need to do this. Initially, when I thought about running, and I just thought, well, this was just a transition. And then, Josh, as you pointed out, I didn't realize how dark it could be and how toxic it could be, and that was I kind of had to reevaluate myself, going, what did I get myself into? Did I sign up for this? Is this really the way the game is played and the way I have to play it? I mean, there was some self-doubt. And Rachel, the kind of the North Star in my life kind of goes, look, you signed up for it, so you better follow through. And sometimes she had to tell me, buck it up, buckaroo.
Okay, I love it.
You made this call, and let's follow through. And so Rachel was, she's the love of my life and my life partner, and yeah, she, as I've pointed out at my watch party, she was the heart, soul, and conscience of my community, my candidacy, and my campaign. And she kind of kept me on the right path and just reminded me that and so as I wrap it up, so to speak, be ready to go January 1st, she's also said, okay, this is just the start. So even though the campaign was rough and tumble, well, we're going to have to deal with the rough and tumble of everyday politics and be ready to go and deal with all the personalities out there and try to do the best we can.
Can you, can you share with us your initial reaction to the Dr. No comment, and then, and maybe I guess in the end, maybe in the most positive way, you could say it's a moment for the community to learn, I guess. So I'd like to just hear your reflections on that experience.
It's a unique experience, and first it kind of, I'll tell you what, when she first said it, she said it at two forms. The first form, I didn't catch it. My team caught it. My political consultant caught it and pointed out to me, he says, did you understand that she kind of dissed you? And I go, what did she say? Well, she referred to you as Dr. No. And I was like, yeah, what? And I didn't really get it. She goes, you don't know? I go, no, who's Dr. No? She says, well, it's a Asian villain. And it was, at that time, one of the first James Bond movies. It was an Anglo actor playing as an Asian, what we call yellowface, which is the same thing as blackface. And so African Americans know that issue about how racially insensitive that can be to that. And so I go, yeah, you're right. I didn't remember Dr. No, and I said, yeah, he was a bad guy. And yeah, so when she did it again, because I didn't call her out the first time, the second at the Deputy Sheriff's Association forum, she did it again, and she kind of doubled down. And that's when I decided I got to call it out. And I said, what do you mean by that? Well, you keep saying no to baseball, you say no to the jail, you just no. And I said, yeah, but why can't you call me Peter, or why can't you call me Judge Sakai? Well, that's because, you're just a no guy. And I said, yeah, but this is about dignity and civility, and that's all I'm asking you to do is please be respectful to me, because I'll refer to you by whatever title you want. And she doubled down, and in essence, just wouldn't concede anything. So the takeaway, Josh, was that, and my first response was not to call her a racist, and I still will not call her a racist, because I don't think Trish DeBerry's a racist. I really don't. But she's tremendously insensitive, because what I came away with is, after being told by my team, hey, she's saying dissing you for this, my sister goes, just excuse my language, really upsets me. She used the other word, and I go. And she goes, this is what we had to deal with when we were kids. And growing up an Asian in the Valley in South Texas, I was a minority of minorities. So I was teased. I was taunted. I was bullied because I was an Asian. I go, yeah, I remember those days. And yeah, I was made fun of because I had slant eyes. I was made fun of because of my name. And so I was made fun of, and then basically, because I had no other contemporaries there, just had to deal with it. So I as a minorities, I had to make myself aware. And this is something I learned from this, Josh. When those type of comments happen, I have to point them out, and I have to call people out on it. And that's something I learned. I said, you know what? As a kid, and I think we kind of ignored it. We were told by parents, just let those people say what they want to say. Just ignore it. My parents told me, just ignore it. But we can't ignore it anymore. We can't allow these type of comments to permeate and penetrate our community, because then it creates that insensitivity. And ultimately, it does create racism. It does create discrimination. It creates hate and anger. And so it taught me, don't give people a pass. You're not a little kid and being told by your parents, ignore it. Tell people that it's not appropriate. Now, the other takeaway, you don't have to start calling people racist, unless it is in the proper context a racist comment. Now, obviously, we know there's still a lot of racism and discrimination, and so we need to call it for what it is. But I think in this situation, it was a very insensitive comment, and I'm just very disappointed that later at Texas Public Radio, she was asked by the commentator there, you want to apologize? And she didn't. She says, well, when is Sakai going to apologize to me for, and I said, you want an apology? I apologize. Now, I really don't know what I'm, but if that's what you need, I apologize. So I was gracious enough to say, I apologize. And she still wouldn't apologize. So, Josh, those are, I think, lessons for all of us to have a takeaway. We need to develop sensitivity. We need to develop compassion. We need to develop dignity and respect. And so I think it's important for all of us, especially those in media, to call things out for what they are and not tolerate it. And at the same time, be careful about what we label people. Because sometimes it's not racism, it's just insensitivity. It's ignorance. And we need to call that out too. So that's my takeaway from the Dr. No. It was a life experience for me as an adult. And that has taught me, we're still learning. I still learn things. So I'm looking forward to this county judge. I guess I got this old dog's going to have to learn some new tricks and learn to, deal with the issues that come up. And I'm sure I'll be having those type of situations where I will have to speak out in this community.
Yeah, I'm sure you will too, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. But, they arise. And so it's important when you're in that leadership position, right, to be able to give a voice to the right response or the right words or the right action, right? Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
I think we alluded to it earlier, and you've talked about it before. And one of the things I really respect about you as an official, from the very beginning, from the very first time, when I became a reporter here at the San Antonio Express News years ago, was that you're very transparent and open. We know, every reporter knows, if they call you up, they're going to get a call back, and you're not going to ignore, and you're going to answer the questions. On the record today, after your election here, what can you say about how dark the ads got? And if you can speak also to the dark money ads, but then also the Diamond Alexander ads.
Sure. That part of the campaign is I'll be honest with you, I will state on the record again, I have no idea who put those dark ads together. I don't know where they came from. I had nothing to do with it, my campaign, nor myself or anybody with my campaign. And I've asked my campaign, look, guys, if we got any connection, I need to know. So I'm stating on the record, I had nothing to do with the dark ads, the initial ones. And then there were some subsequent ads that were positive, that were some really excellent. And I have no idea who made those ads. Mm-hmm. And so this kind of speaks to the current culture and environment. We're out of control. Mm-hmm. Campaign finance is out of control. And, I'll go on record. I had to raise a lot of money, and I did. And I was asked, I said, I was asked about some of the big contributions that were made to my campaign. I said, look, the Kim Rapier-Verrett money, she gave me a huge donation because she is a friend and she's committed to children and families like I am. And so she just wrote a check that she was able to do. She has no business dealings with the county. So, but at the same time, I wish I didn't have to spend so much money. I wish I didn't have to arm up, so to speak. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, with those type of ads that go both ways, and we saw how the other campaigns, like the district attorney, those were ugly ads. And so, as a campaign, you just got to make decisions on how to respond. And so In regards to the Diamond Alexander Washington, we knew that was a potential negative ad, and we were prepared to respond, and we decided that we weren't going to respond. And what I appreciated was the public support and y'all's support of just pointing out what the truth was. And I think that's the power of what y'all bring as the media. You spoke to truth. You said, look, this is the way this case went down. It was a very unfortunate circumstance, and it really resulted as a result of holding myself accountable. We did a study. There was a court-ordered study, and we found that there was systemic breakdown, and that the system kind of broke down in overseeing this particular child and mother, and that there was information not provided to me as a judge that should have been. And so there were a lot of breakdowns along the way systemically. And so, we chose not to respond, and I think the vote that came out yesterday was an indication of Judge Sakai, that was an unfortunate circumstance, but you're transparent, you were genuine, you did things with integrity, and I think I was rewarded. I was rewarded by being the next county judge.
Thank you.
Trish DeBerry, she argued for relocating the jail on the west side, and there are a lot of complicated factors to any potential relocation, and obviously you were opposed to that. But I think there are some underlying concerns that merit a lot of consideration. The presence of the jail as an obstacle for economic development on the west side, the condition of the jail in terms of how those who are incarcerated there, the conditions they live in, but also the conditions that the deputies work in.
Right.
And so I'd like to hear your thoughts on addressing those concerns, because I think that was a really important. Those were really important points for the community to discuss and think about.
Well, first and foremost, in regards to the relocation of the jail, I think that the second question I asked Trish DeBerry was, okay, you want to build a new jail. And I said, where are you going to put it?
Right.
I said, if you can answer that and I can understand where you're going to put it, then perhaps I'll reconsider and consider the movement of relocation of the jail. But she couldn't answer it because I heard clearly, and I've heard it clearly, nobody wants it in their backyard. And
including the west side.
Yeah, that's right, including the west side. So, who's and, is it going to be in the south side? And I don't see the Commissioner Clay Flores supporting that. Is it going to go on the east side? I can promise you Commissioner Calvert's not going to support it. Is it going to go on the north side? Well, we didn't have a commissioner at that. We have a commissioner-elect. So the issue there was, okay, if we could see what this looked like, plus what conversations were being had as to who was behind this move, and what are the plans, and if, as you say, if there was transparency to that, I would consider. I'd put it on the table. Let's discuss it. But because of the way it was presented and the way Trish used it as a campaign issue, I wanted to be very clear. No, I'm not going to support the relocation. Now, getting to the jail, that is one of the big issues I have to tackle, and I'll start tackling it now. And in my conversations, the sheriff and I said, we got to sit down and start talking. And we got to figure out, and we're not going to get into this finger pointing. And, we saw in this last budget about, when Commissioner DeBerry was out there about the boat, and that's passed, and then about supporting the jail and the overtime issues. I see the issue with the Sheriff's Department of one of compensation of the employees, as we should look at all county employees, but namely for the jail, we've got to make sure that those deputies that work in that area are properly compensated. We know from studies the sheriff's deputies are paid below what other major metropolitan. So we're going to have to bite the bullet and look at compensation. We're going to have to look at incentives for hiring, and we're going to have to look at incentives for retention. As to, okay, what can we do to, increase the morale? We also know that the jail needs a lot of infrastructure work. It's been neglected, so to speak. Now, I don't need to finger point to say, well, who's responsible for that? Let's just get it fixed. And let's make sure that the employees feel that they work in a safe place. And then let's look at the two studies. And, and that was another example of, to me, a waste of Why is there 2 studies? Okay, fine. But with 2 studies, then let's analyze both studies and see what recommendations are being made. And I think the sheriff, and I've looked at the study the sheriff did. I haven't seen the study that Commissioner DeBerry asked for. And so I don't know what happened to that study. So my thing is, let's get the studies out. Let's see what recommendations are. And I think the sheriff's already looked at changing the hours, the duty hours, so that it will more help the employees. And then we're going to have to figure out, okay, we got to increase compensation. That's an issue. That's the reason why I look at that as part of the bare necessities, the back to basics. It's like, let's look at compensation. Let's look at how we can improve the working conditions. We've got to, and this is a lesson I learned from child welfare, because at the Diamond Alexander time, we went through a phase where CPS was having a tremendous, and y'all were covering that, and turnover was a big issue back then. And at that point, some of the intended outcomes of those child deaths were the fact that they put focus back on child welfare and increased compensation. And for a while, we stabilized CPS. Now, CPS is back into a mess because we have not given the attention. And that's a failure of leadership, but that's another day, another topic. But what we need to do is focus in and make sure that we take care of the employees. You take care of the employees then take care of the citizens and do their duties as they're asked to do. And so that's what I see with the jail. We've got to resolve that issue, and we got to do it in a positive way. And we do that by talking to each other, Josh. We do that by then figuring out what we can do. And, and then I kind of called out the budget office on this last budget issue where they said no to deputies. And I'm like, we've got a crime issue. I've heard it clearly, and especially the unincorporated areas. That's where the growth is, and that's where the county's going to have to step up. And we know that the county has limited authority of regulating those type of areas, and so we're going to have to double down and provide better public safety, public health for those unincorporated areas. And so public safety is a big issue. I mean, that was the issue in the district attorney's office, and I heard it on the campaign trail. And we knew that was a campaign kind of topic out there about, are you safe? Mm-hmm. So I've got to make sure that the citizens of Bexar County feel safe. And so that's why I'm totally committed to make sure our law enforcement are properly funded, properly compensated, and they're treated with dignity and respect. And at the same time, I also want to make sure that all county government, and that's what I want to do in the first 100 days, I want to talk to the department heads, I want to talk to the elected officials, and I want to see what they need. Because if you're familiar with county government, as I have for the 26 years as a district court judge, I can tell you, we're still working with antiquated technology. We're still working with a paper system. Mm-hmm. And those are issues I'm like, when are we going to get up to speed, county government? We still do things what we did 30 years ago. We've made some improvement on magistration, but I can tell you that's another issue I want to revisit. We still have a very inefficient magistration system. It's still taking too long for people to get when they're arrested and get out. God help you if you're trying to get out of that Bexar County jail. So those are things, Josh, I want to focus in on. I think those are the nuts and bolts people want to see.
Well, they're getting magistrated twice, right?
There you go, Josh. That's an issue that I am very familiar with.
During our editorial board meeting, we were arguing about the necessity of still needing constables, mm-hmm. and you pushed back on us with some ideas about how they could be better used.
Yes. Yeah. Well, I'm taking the position that they're constitutionally created, and if we were to get rid of them, it's got to be passed by constitutional amendment, and everybody who says we got to get rid of, fine, you're going to have to pass a constitutional amendment statewide. Now, if it ain't going to pass, then we're going to have to live with the constables. And so instead of marginalizing them or let's figure out how we can make them more integrated, make them more efficient. And I really see with school safety That's another issue I want to have a conversation with. And I want to have a conversation with school superintendents. And I want to be able to say, are we prepared for an active shooter? I hate saying this on the record, but we're going to have one. It's going to happen, and we better be ready. Or we better be having a system of prevention where we can intervene. And so I want that conversation with the constables and the deputies and the San Antonio Police Department to say, hey, are we connected with the schools? Do we need more training? Does the county need to pay for that? Or whoever needs to pay? Are we prepared so that whenever we have a situation, a crisis, we're ready to go? We cannot have another Uvalde. We just cannot. We cannot have where something tragic happens and then we point fingers. And we can't have a situation where law enforcement breaks down. And so, do they have the right communications? Are there walkie-talkies, their communication systems working in the schools? Are we all on the same channel, so to speak? Or are we using the same equipment? Are we able to communicate with each other? Are we trained? Do we go through training so that we're not pointing fingers, going, well, who's in charge? I'm going to be asking those questions of the school superintendent, saying, look, you guys may be prepared, but I want to make sure that our deputies and our constables, because that's the other thing, the constables I see are the law enforcement, and I've had conversation with our constables, and I really have full faith in our constables, especially Constable Tejeda, Constable Vasquez, Constable Brown are the ones I've had conversations with, and they're already working with the schools. They're doing a lot of the speed limit things and school safety. So that's the reason what intrigued me was, oh, you guys are already working with schools? Yeah, we work with schools. We know our schools because we're the law enforcement closest to the ground, so to speak. They know their neighborhoods. And so if they know their neighborhoods, perhaps they know the kids that they need to keep an eye on. And so the other thing is, and we've seen it in other jurisdictions, when the schools call law enforcement, and you bring in the deputies or the city police into these school situations, sometimes you see some really bad interaction. The kids get into these horrible confrontations with the law enforcement, and you see the law enforcement doing what they do. Sometimes they're very aggressive, they're very confrontational. And we see, unfortunately, and I want to respect law enforcement. They're there to serve and protect, and they're there to, if they need to arrest people, they arrest. But, if a kid's mouthing off, guess what? You see some really ugly confrontations of kids and law enforcement. So what I want is really get that type of law enforcement out of the schools. I really want to see a community-based law enforcement. That's the reason why I pushed back and said, I think the constables, because if you talk to the constables, say, we know the kids, we know our schools, we know the principal, we know the school districts. You can't say, and out of fairness, you can't expect a San Antonio police officer or Bexar County Sheriff's officer who does patrol to know his schools, to know his neighborhood. I promise you, the constables do. They have told me, we know our neighborhoods. And so that's the reason why I'm like, why can't we use that and then kind of bring back that community policing that I think we were on at one time, and then because of some of the crazy, and then obviously this big negativity out there between police and community. Police, unfortunately, they got to be prepared, and so we still have tragic, unfortunate confrontations between the police and the public. And so that's the reason why I see the constables as in regards to school. And then if we can and the other thing we know from the past incident, we know a lot of these kids and the kids that do this, they're telling everybody what they're going to do. Mm-hmm. So why aren't we being proactive? And I believe the schools are monitoring social media and using the power of social media to say, okay, we need to monitor that and we need to intervene in these kids' lives. And that's the reason why I'm hoping with the legislature, look, can we beef up our enforceability with red flag laws, which means, can we identify people that are potential danger and then using our court system say, okay, we think there's a problem here. We need to have authority over you, especially if it's minors and juveniles. You know, we need a court order to say, okay, we're going to step in and we're going to pull you out and we're going to evaluate you through a mental health process to see, are you a threat or are you just an angry person that just needs to cool down? Or are you a person that's going to carry out whatever threat you're going to do? So these are complicated issues, complex issues that are going to require us to be talking and collaborating and coordinating. So that's what I see in regards to the constables.
I think further complicated by this being a red state. I mean, what is your plan for working with the state? I mean, do you plan on advocating the way you just described
Yes.
for that and being very active at a state level as well?
I'll be honest with you. I'm going to reach out to Governor Abbott. I'm going to congratulate him on his campaign and say, hey, I won, you won. Now let's figure out how do we fix things. Mm-hmm. And I think all elected officials want to do the right thing. Even though we may be on opposite side of the partisan, we may have very different views of how we do it. I'm going to try to find a way, and that's I think the strength of me being a former judge. I hear there's two sides of the dispute, especially in family law. He said, she said, and I'm like, okay, this is what this issue is all about. Now this is how we resolve it. And a lot of times that's all people needed in the court was somebody to listen and then somebody to make a decision, and that's what I'm hoping to do with my fellow elected officials. Okay, can we listen to each other, and can we find common ground? Can we find consensus, and can we find solutions?
Peter, we just got the 5-minute signal, so I think a good last question is, obviously, you're going to follow Bexar County Judge Nelson Wolff, 21 years in this office. So I was wondering if you could reflect a little bit on his tenure and the accomplishments that you see, during his time. It'd be interesting just to hear your insights on that.
Well, Nelson's one of a kind. He is truly one of a kind. He's a visionary leader. He's somebody that basically I consider him a mentor. I mean, somebody that I'm sure will still be involved. It's going to be a person that I will seek guidance and counsel with. And I know that he did it his way, and I want to make it clear that Judge Sakai will do it his way. And obviously, I think we have a contrast in personality and style and the way we present things. I'm hoping to be visionary in my own way. Mm-hmm. But with Nelson, nobody's going to replace Nelson. Nelson's one of a kind, and he's established these legacy projects out there. The mission reach with connecting the San Antonio River, the Tobin Center as a cultural center for the city, the San Pedro Creek, which is a game changer for downtown and economic development, and possibly a new baseball stadium, and the linear park system that we have. But what I see is, we need to continue and finish those projects, and I'm not going to, I say, well, we're going to shift out of that. No. And when we see some really great projects that might create opportunities, economic development, we know that we're in a growing county. And we got to continue to fuel that growth. We got people moving here. But we're also going to have added responsibilities and duties and protection of safety and health. And so we need to grow. And so I'm not one to say no, we're going to not spend another dime. No, but we want to basically get the confidence of the citizens, the voters, to say, hey, Bexar County can run effectively and efficiently, and it can better serve you. And I think that's what I want to establish is I want to be able to tell my children, adult children, my grandchildren, hey, you can come back home because they're all in the Houston area, and it's because of the compensation, and we need to raise that level. That's the reason why I'm willing to look at. We got to do that for our county employees. We need to. We can't be, poor boying it, so to speak, and saying, well, we just can't do things. And so that's not going to be in my vernacular. Well, you can't do that, Judge, or it's never been done. Why can't we? And so I want to leave a sense of hope and optimism, and in that sense, that's what Nelson was very good at. he created that hope and optimism with big legacy projects. And so I'm hoping to have my legacy projects in my own way. And if we can create a healthier community, a safer community, a more educated community, a community that we all get along and we respect each other and we were able to agree to disagree, then I'll say I think I did a good job.
Sounds pretty good. Bexar County Elect Judge Peter Sakai.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Josh